Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room already 10 steps ahead while pretending they're 2 steps behind? They downplay their skills. They let others explain things they already understand. They smile, nod, and quietly file information away while everyone else performs competence at full volume. And then later something happens. A problem appears. A decision needs to be made. And suddenly that unassuming person moves with precision, calm, effective, almost annoyingly capable. If you've ever been told, "Wow, I didn't expect that from you," and felt oddly satisfied, this might be about you. Or maybe you know someone like this, someone who seems perfectly comfortable being underestimated. It looks like humility, or shyness, or a lack of ambition. But underneath it is a very specific psychology, one that isn't about weakness at all. Let's talk about why some people prefer being underestimated and what it quietly gives them. There's a certain type of person who learned early that attention isn't always a gift. Picture this: a student in class who knows the answer but doesn't raise their hand. They've done it before. They remember what came with it, the extra expectations, the teasing, the pressure to perform again and again. So now they let others shine. They keep their head down. This isn't insecurity, it's pattern recognition. Psychologically, these people associate visibility with cost. When you stand out, you get watched. When you get watched, you get judged. And when you get judged, mistakes feel heavier. So they choose a quieter position. Being underestimated becomes a form of emotional insulation. If no one expects much, failure doesn't sting as sharply. And success, it feels private, controlled, safe. If this resonates, you might notice how you work best when no one's hovering. When praise comes too early, it actually throws you off. You prefer to surprise rather than impress in advance. Then there's another profile, the strategic observer. You'll recognize them in meetings. They listen more than they speak. They ask fewer questions than they could. They let others talk themselves into corners. And while everyone else is busy signaling intelligence, this person is collecting data. This type understands something subtle about social dynamics. The less you reveal, the more people project. When you speak less, others fill in the gaps. Sometimes they assume you're less capable, sometimes they assume you're harmless, and that assumption is powerful. Being underestimated gives them informational advantage. People explain things more fully. They reveal motives. They show their hand. The underestimated person becomes invisible in the best possible way. This isn't manipulation, it's restraint. They know that power doesn't always come from asserting dominance. Sometimes it comes from letting others underestimate your reach. If this is you, you might notice how uncomfortable you feel around people who constantly self-promote. Not because they're wrong, but because they're loud or you're precise. Another pattern shows up in people who've been burned by being ahead of the curve. Maybe they had ideas before others were ready. Maybe they were emotionally mature in rooms that weren't. Maybe they spoke truth too early and paid for it socially. So now they slow down. They keep insights to themselves until timing feels right. They'd rather be late and aligned than early and rejected. Being underestimated becomes a form of self-protection from misunderstanding. Psychologically, this is about pacing. They've learned that being right isn't enough. You have to be understood, and understanding often lags behind insight. So they wait. They let others catch up. If you've ever felt relief when someone finally got it, after months or years of you knowing all along, this might be your pattern. But here's the twist most people miss. For some, preferring to be underestimated isn't about fear at all. It's about control. These are people who don't like being boxed in by other people's expectations. Once someone decides who you are, the smart one, the reliable one, the leader, you're suddenly responsible for maintaining that image, and that feels like a trap. So they shrink the box on purpose. They present a simpler version of themselves, less impressive, less defined. Why? Because it leaves room to move. Psychologically, this is autonomy at work. They don't want their identity outsourced to other people's narratives. They'd rather reveal themselves slowly, selectively, on their own terms. If this sounds familiar, You might notice how you resist labels, even positive ones. Compliments feel like commitments. And sometimes being underestimated feels like freedom. Then there's a quieter, more emotional layer. Some people prefer being underestimated because it keeps disappointment at a distance. If no one expects greatness, no one feels let down when you have an off day. This often shows up in people who learned early to manage other people's emotions. They became attuned to expectations, to hope, to pressure. So they lower the bar not because they can't reach it, but because they're tired of carrying it. Being underestimated allows them to exist without performing, without constantly proving, without being on. If you've ever felt more relaxed around strangers than around people who know how capable you are, this might explain why. And yet, there's a cost. When you're consistently underestimated, parts of you stay unseen. Opportunities pass by because no one thought to offer them. Your competence becomes a private language instead of a shared reality. The psychology here is a trade-off. Safety versus recognition. Freedom versus visibility. And most people who prefer being underestimated aren't unaware of this. They've simply decided, consciously or not, that the trade is worth it for now. So here's the real question. Do you prefer being underestimated because it protects you or because it hides you? Because those two can feel very similar, but they lead to different futures. If you see yourself in any of these patterns, notice when being underestimated feels empowering and when it starts to feel limiting. Sometimes the same behavior that once kept you safe eventually keeps you small. And sometimes staying underestimated is a phase, not an identity. So which version of this feels closest to you? And if people truly saw your full capability tomorrow, would that feel exciting or exhausting? Let me know what landed for you. And if you're curious about the quiet psychologies we rarely talk about, you know where to find more.